Well, hello, Viva Albertos. JP Hill here from VivaAlbertos.com. Here again for our Wild Card Series preview episode with the other writers from the website. To my left, we've got Skyrick. Mike Jones is here with us. Below him, we've got our game recap master, Connor Lemons. Fresh off his Ohio State coverage and more Ohio State stuff coming as the basketball season gets going soon. And then we've got Mr. Nicholas himself, Gabe Simmons, here with the playoff mustache in full force. Blake can't join us today, and Heather might pop in. We'll see. But we've got these four here today, which means we got some great content for you to talk about the Phillies versus the Cardinals in the Wild Card Series, which starts on Friday. But before we jump into that, the Cardinals season is over. Game 162 is in the books, ending with a Paul DeJong double play ball that just seemed very appropriate for his season and a loss to the Pirates. So the Cardinals end the season with 93 wins, more probably than any of us predicted or right on with some of us. But a pretty good season. Guys, I'll just throw it to you. How are we feeling about the Cardinals as they're heading into the postseason? No, I can call on you individually if you want me to. It's totally up. I know silence makes for good radio, but
So
you know what? We haven't
know,
heard. Yeah, let's go ahead, Mike. Yeah, go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, I know that it's not supposed to matter, right? How if you're hot or you're not, and how the season ends. There's all kinds of studies on it. This series has me really nervous. Because the Phillies have two really good frontline starters, and we're just not hitting the ball very well. And our one of our best hitter is not hitting well, and our second best hitter, Arenado, is got a little bit of a quad issue. I know all those things. I know what the studies say. I know it's not supposed to matter. It's supposed to be a clean slate, but I'm not really worried about our pitching at all. I really hope that we don't have a repeat of that 2019 NLCS where we just get skunked because we can't do anything offensively.
Yeah, no, just because I was wondering about this, and so I thought I'd look it up. Month by month record here in the month of September, they were 15 and 11, 97 runs scored, 92 runs allowed, a 577 win percentage is actually better than I thought. And
better than I would have thought too.
Yeah. It didn't feel that good. Maybe it was early September that got some wins in there, and then October 2-2. And I'm not sure if that's updated for today's game. It is the 5th. So it should be 2-3, I think. Was there a day? Yeah, 2-3. So, yeah, I mean, October hasn't been all that outstanding. We're only talking about a couple days. And a lot of that was with a kind of a scrub lineup. But what do you guys think about that? Do you agree with Mike? Is it worrisome? Do you not care?
I'm personally not concerned at all about the Pirates series. When we asked how we thought we were going to do against the Pirates, I said 3-3, which we did. I didn't stick to my guns on the preview, unfortunately. I should have done that, but because I predicted 4-2 there. But yeah, looking at, our offense wasn't necessarily a problem in the Pirates series. We scored 13 runs, 5 runs, 8 runs. That was in 10 innings, but I think we still scored 7 runs in regulation, 3 runs. So, I just didn't think we were going to play that well in this series ahead of time because we were going to have the B lineup, we're going to have the C lineup or whatever. Our best pitchers weren't going to be pitching many innings.
Right.
So I think it was just a palate cleanser before the playoffs. And I am worried about Goldschmidt because he does need to be hitting, but that's about the extent of my worries as far as going into the series. But that isn't necessarily have to do with the Pirates. It has to do with just Goldschmidt September, even though I think he's been above average this month still somehow. think Blake wrote an article on that recently. I don't know if the updated stats still suggest he's been above average, but I mean October and September, not just October. But yeah, I didn't have any expectations for the Cardinals to do well against the Pirates, so I'm not really concerned about that specifically.
I mean, they pretty much played the B squad from like the sixth inning on, and it was good to see them when they fell back. They were down, I think, 7-3 in game two, and they came back to force extras with a lot of the guys off the bench coming in. So the offense wasn't an issue. I'm a little concerned just with the back end of the bullpen just from the last game. Palante didn't look great in the series. I think Gio had the three straight walks before they let the run in, and then I think they said Helsley was just like a jammed middle finger, which if you've ever like played basketball and jammed your finger, that should just take a couple of days. But I'd have to imagine that if it's still bothering you after a few days, that could be problematic. So if I have any concern, it might be the three most reliable relievers all kind of have question marks right now.
Yeah, a couple notes just to follow up on that. Goldschmidt in September, 245, 333, 383 slash line, 716 OPS if you don't want to do the math in your head. That's in a season where offense is down across the board. That's 108 WRC plus, which is a good season for Dylan Carlson, but a bad month for Paul Goldschmidt, but still above average. So if you want to have a takeaway from that, his March, April, and which is a short month, March and April in the strike season, short month, well, lockout. Let's put the blame where it belongs. Lockout season. His bookend months weren't so great, and he was, Babe Ruth in between. But he's probably had 3 total bad weeks on the season. And so, yeah, I kind of get that. Like, I understand the concern, but part of me does expect him to ramp it back up. If anyone deserved a little break, a little mental rest, it was him. And we know he can turn it on at any moment.
Well, and you've got, see, for me, and I agree with everything Gabe said. For me, it really wasn't so much about the Pittsburgh series as it really was about just a lot of our people are cold, and we're cold in the month of September. It's over the same span you're talking about. Arenado's had some bad BABIP block, 214 over that span, 88, 215, 298 on base percentage since September 1st. And if those two guys don't really do a whole lot, I think we're in deep trouble. All those guys, Newt Bar went cold. We lost O'Neill. Burleson hasn't really, it's small sample size, but nobody's done a whole lot. And I think that the Phillies have, a couple of starters who can really capitalize on that if that trend continues.
Right. So I think what we're hearing from all of us is a little bit of hopeful trepidation, for lack of a better term. Like, we think they should be able to put out of it. But, I mean, the Phillies are not, despite not having a ton of wins, what do they win? 87 games, I think, 88, something in that range. Despite not being a juggernaut themselves, it's not a pushover team. And it might not even be the best matchup offensively because of their pitching. And our pitching staff doesn't match up well or not. That's up for debate. And we can get into that a little bit as we go kind of through here, because like we're going to keep coming back to this because I'm with Mike. The fact that they've got 2 frontline starters in Wheeler and Nola just sitting there in games 1 and 2, anything could happen. And I guess also I think I'm still a little, shell shocked from the Phillies back, in the day in the Jimmy Rollins era and stuff like that, and how good those teams were. And I realized that there's not a single player on either team except for Albert Pujols, I guess, and Yachty. Well, I say single player now that I think about it. We've got 3 stars from those games, but not very many stars from either team still left. But I still kind of have that fear of the Phillies in the back of my mind. So let's run through the schedule here for those that haven't seen it yet. We've got wild card series, all of them at home for the Cardinals. Game 1 starts Friday at what time was that? I don't have it now up in front of me.
1 o'clock, I believe.
1 o'clock.
It was 7
Okay.
or something.
107. That's a very precise time.
107. If they start at 106 or 108, the Phillies have to forfeit, so that's good because we're the home team. That's a joke, guys. Don't take me seriously. Clarifying, no sarcasm on the podcast when we're giving serious information. And then, so yeah, you'll have to skip work. I think all of us are coming down with a cold on Friday. I can feel it coming on myself, even right now. But then Saturday and Sunday, primetime games, 7:37. I didn't get the channels on. I know that the Friday game is ABC. Friday game is ABC and Oddity, and I know we get Alex Rodriguez and on the call for that one.
Michael K too.
Yeah, it's gonna be just wonderful. You might want to throw your radio on for those matchups. And then on Saturday and Sunday primetime game, I know the Sunday game is ESPN2.
They both are.
They both are. Okay. I know they're the same time as another match. So yeah. So get your cable box out and yeah, should be available for most fans to see. Not really getting in the way of too much. That Friday daytime game kind of sucks, but you had to kind of expect that. And then the Saturday and Sunday primetime is a good thing for us. Any notes about the schedule from you guys? It doesn't really matter, does it?
I mean, it does for me. I'm missing game 2 because of work. And in game 1, I'm gonna probably have to be at work at till 5 or 6 to hope I can have a really short day on Friday. But some of that's not in my control. So we'll see. I'll catch most of game 1, I'm sure. But
yeah.
So
what you worry about on these seems like what you worry about on these odd times and playoff starts, which these are fairly normal starts, is shadows and light on the mound. But at 1 o'clock start and then 7:30 starts, I don't see those being an issue at all. Do you guys?
I'd rather have that than remember back in 2002 when we were playing the Diamondbacks and it was on this channel like Fox Family and it started at 9:40 at night.
Yeah, that was terrible.
It's like, so I mean, neither one of them. I mean, 1 o'clock isn't terribly convenient, but at least I'd rather have that than ending the game at 1 a.m.
Yeah, on a weird channel.
I think that was past my bedtime in 2002.
My bedtime. It was past my bedtime too, and I had to go to work.
Yeah.
Can somebody explain do you know how they kind of decided that for game 1? Is it just because it's the Mets and it's the New York market? Because my logic would just say that the Guardians are a 3, the Cardinals are the 3, therefore those two teams should get the later games to get more eyes on TV. But it's the Mets all 3 nights, I think.
It's all about market, I believe, not the seeding, unfortunately.
Yeah,
that's what I figured.
Yeah. Okay, so that's a little bit of information there, times and schedules. So plan accordingly, and we will, we'll try to have coverage. We're going to try to make sure that we have game recaps up every day. I know that our schedules are a little wonky, and we're not as highly staffed as we once were. So we're trying our best to make sure that you guys get coverage every day. But I'm sure there'll at least be chats and open threads and stuff like that. But I can tell you that Mike and Connor and us are going to try to make sure that we have game threads and game recaps out there. So look for those on a daily basis. All right, now let's talk Phillies and let's talk roster. And we were kind of debating beforehand which one of these we wanted to go first. And I think here that we're here, I'm ready to talk Phillies because I think that the way that we configure our roster conversations, it matters more about what we think this Phillies team is. And I'll just be really honest. I watched most of the Phillies series when they were in Philly. I don't remember Philly coming to St. Louis. I don't know if that was early in the season or if I was just not paying attention or what. But I remember the Philly series in Philly because I'm pretty sure Matthew Liberatore made one of his starts in Philly. And I remember thinking how terrible of a matchup that was and how poorly that was going to go. And then that's exactly what happened. So I did catch most of that. And I'm pretty sure we either got swept or only won one game there.
I got the schedule.
Yeah, go ahead.
We first went to Philadelphia, lost 2 out of 3. And then we played the weekend after against the Phillies, which was a weird Friday to Monday series. We split with them. Lost the first 2 games, 2-0 and 1-0.
Okay.
Hopefully that's a sign of things to come. And then won the next 2 games. So we went 3-4.
3-4. This year. I think it was those 2 that Friday or Thursday, Friday, whatever that was. The 2 games that I lost that are really sticking out to me as being pretty rough. So pretty close series. And I just remember, especially that matchup in Philadelphia. Now they won't be in Philadelphia. Just how poor the pitching seemed that series. But we get them at home. We get them at Bush. Their power hitting might not quite be such a big deal, although Bush has been playing more like a hitter's park this season than it has in the past. But yeah, what do we need to know about the Phillies team?
They are a phenomenally bad matchup in a short series because of Aaron Nola and Zach Wheeler. If you make it to game three, you're doing all right, especially because I think their game three starter right now is a lefty, which is real nice for cards. Not only that, I think they're fifth in baseball in work against left-handed pitchers, and two of our three projected starters, I don't know, we'll see, might be lefties. We just seem to be a very left-handed pitching focused rotation and slightly bullpen. And that's not ideal, even though their two best hitters are both left-handed, I believe. But they got a lot of right-handed guys who aren't good on the whole, who can mash lefties. So it's just not an ideal matchup in a short series. If we were playing them for 7 games, I'd feel a lot more confident. But yeah, the basic thing is just figure out a way to win one of the first 2 games. You look pretty good for game 3. That's about as good as you could hope for, I guess.
Pretty sure that Zach Wheeler's got this season is at 14 innings, no earned runs against the Cardinals, and they'll get him game 1.
Yeah. We're due.
That's the hope. That's the hope that it's not like a Corbin Burns situation where they just look. Sometimes against the elite pitchers, I think St. Louis just looks like defeated from the get-go when they're facing the top of the line guys. So hopefully it's not like a Corbin Burns situation, but I think you're on the money. Like if they lose game 1 to Wheeler, they're able to get Nola game 2. I think if you make it to game 3 with like Ranger Suarez, I think they're in a great spot.
Yeah, I mean, if we can find a way to get to their bullpen and hope they are wild and can't find the strike zone. They've got a lot of ballers in the bullpen, but some of those guys that they've got remind me of some of the guys, we used to have, and that, they strike out a lot of guys, but they also have walk issues in the bullpen. So if we can, basically the formula is try to get to the 2. I mean, it sounds silly, right? But like try to get to the 2 starters early and then hope to knock them out. That's the best thing you can hope for. But yeah, I agree with Gabe. I'm really worried about this. I think it's possible that we just get completely skunked by those 2 starters when it's over before it starts. I hope that's not the case.
Right. What do we think about Mikolas on the flip side, though? I mean, like Wheeler and Nola are extremely talented. Mikolas has had a pretty impressive season. And I realize it's not exactly the same kind of pitcher, but is he a good matchup against this mostly right-handed dominant Phillies lineup with 2 very important lefties? We'll talk about Harper and Schwarber, but a lot of righties in there too.
It's tough to say just because Mikolas isn't really a strikeout pitcher, so he's not going to like dominate the Phillies in necessarily the same way that Nola or Wheeler might dominate the Cardinals. He kind of has to rely a little bit on weak contact. And they still got Bryce Harper, who could almost win a game by himself, especially if the starter will dominate the Cardinals. And who's the other lefty they got?
Schwarber.
Schwarber. So, I mean, those guys aren't going to be easy for Mikolas. Those aren't really good matchups for him.
Although, especially in Schwarber's case, he's now Harper. I mean, we're just talking about one of the best hitters in the game. So, yeah, he's not a good matchup for Mikolas. He's not a good matchup for anyone unless you're a lefty. But Schwarber is not all, but a lot of home run is his.
Oh, he's home run or bust basically. He's not that.
And that's if Schwarber or if Mikolas has one elite skill beyond his ability to not walk anybody, it's not allowing home runs, keeping balls in the ballpark. And Bush might help there a little bit as well, especially against lefties. So, I mean, you got to worry about Harper a lot. But Schwarber in that matchup is maybe not as bad as you would think.
For sure.
But still, though, I mean, I don't know about you. I'd take Wheeler over Mikolas personally. If we had the ability to trade today, I'd take Wheeler on a heartbeat. So.
I mean, we do have a better defense than Philadelphia, but you have to remember too that, our guys aren't necessarily. I mean, they're sub 50% ground ball guys. Our outfield defense that we're going to have to use is not as good as it was, especially if we're thinking about putting Juan Yepez and Burleson out there. If they can't keep it on, I mean, if they keep it on the ground, I'm not worried. But if they start, hitting line drives into the gaps, we could see a few gray hairs out there.
Yeah, I want to circle back to Yepez in the outfield because that's gaining some steam, and he has been hitting a little bit lately, and it might be just him by default, but Yepez in the outfield in a series that might come down to who makes the fewest defensive mistakes, because one or two defensive mistakes could turn this series completely around. And you really want the Phillies to make those mistakes because Phillies are not a quality defensive team. And the Cardinals have got to play good defense. I would like that more. And it's like you said, someone, I think probably Gabe or maybe Connor, in a 7-game series, defense is going to show up a little bit more than it will in 3. But if one game can turn on a misplay by Castellanos or Harper or Schwarber, all the better for the Cardinals because hopefully they won't be making those mistakes.
By the way, I just want to share some interesting stats. When Mike mentioned we got to get to the pitchers early. Interestingly enough, their stats. So this is who's this? Aaron Nola, first time through the order, has a 1.17 ERA. So I wouldn't count on that one. Second time through the order, 4.30 ERA. Third time through the order, 5.07. And in the case of Wheeler, he's got a 1.67 ERA the first time through the order, 2.91 second time, 4.63 third time. They really follow the traditional 3 times for the penalty there. So don't lose hope if they don't score in the first or second inning, because that's not typically when teams get to those pitchers, which is interesting because, some pitchers seem like they have really tough first innings. They aren't one of them. So just hopefully we can get to them, though.
I think when the Cardinals faced Nola this season, I don't have the box score up, but I'm pretty sure he gave up 5 earned over 7, and I think it went pretty much like that. Like he got through 5 or 6 smooth sailing, and I think once he got into either the 6th or 7th is when they jumped on him. So I really think that if they're going to get one of those two guys, I think it's probably going to be Nola, but because I think they've done it already once this season.
So in light of that, how would you guys, let's just go ahead and jump into this. Talking about roster construction, how would you guys align your rotation? And I'll let you guys go first because it might not be so creative. Some of you might already be thinking about it, but I've got a creative solution I want to throw out at you guys here in a minute. So what would you guys do?
I think if you're going safe, you go Michaelis 1, Quintana 2, Montgomery 3. There's got to be some temptation to throw Flaherty just for a wild card if you're afraid of going another lefty against them. But I don't think you can trust Wainwright at all in this series after how he finished the season. So I would probably go Michaelis, Quintana, Montgomery 1, 2, 3.
Well, I mean, so I might go Montgomery 1, and just because he last pitched on October 1st, and that was on 6 days of rest on that start. So if he goes game 3, I mean, so even if we wanted to pitch him in game 1, he's looking at another 6 days of rest for that. If we saved him for game 3, then you're talking about 8 days of rest. Now I get it that we want to give people rest towards the end of the year, but the more rest some of these guys have, the worse they can get. They get thrown off of their rhythm a little bit. So I don't know. I mean, I understand that the profile is better against righties, but I don't know. I might go Montgomery 1 just for the rest factor, because Quintana, it would be 4 days of rest for either Michaelis or Quintana for game 1 because they last pitched on the 3rd.
For me, I would say as long as it's those 3 pitchers, I don't necessarily care the order, just because they're kind of all similarly grouped together as a whole, and in one game, anything could happen. So as long as Michael should pitch one of the first two games for sure. You have a guaranteed game there, and they are worse against righties. After that, Quintana and Montgomery. Whether it's, that's a good point with the rest, but I'm sure the Cardinals did something in the meantime though to keep himself fresh. But yeah, that's definitely a good point. And Montgomery's probably got maybe better advanced stats than Quintana as a Cardinal. I don't know if that's true. He definitely has more swing and miss.
Yeah.
For better or worse.
He did for a while. This might have changed towards the end of the season, but up until probably 2 weeks ago, he would have been the better play.
I mean, the only real peripheral that Quintana is better at least as a Cardinal, is not giving up homers. But either way, they're neither one of them. I mean, Montgomery's not a slouch of that area, but Montgomery has a better strikeout rate and a better walk rate. But Quintana has a preposterous 1.9% homer to fly ball ratio, so that's the difference.
Which probably won't hold up in the series against the Phillies, to be honest. So
probably not.
Okay, so let me throw you my crazy idea, and this is all podcast material. You guys, it's never going to happen. Although, if any Cardinals manager was going to do it, Ollie would be the guy to do it. So here's what I would do, and they would fire me the next day. I would start game one with Jordan Montgomery, and I would let him throw one inning, maybe two, but probably one. And then I would go to Miles Mikolas, and I'd let Mikolas throw at least through what I'm getting at is that I want as few at bats possible for Schwarber and Harper against a righty. And so if they've been looking at the Phillies lineups lately, they've been leading off with Harper, leading off with Schwarber. Those guys are always in the top three. I mean, obviously, you're going to play your best hitters at the beginning, and then Real Moto's in there and some other players. But anyway, if you start with Montgomery, then those two are already starting in a pretty deep hole. Schwarber in particular is not very good against lefties. Harper's not as bad, but he still has the normal lefty split that you would expect. So Montgomery game one inning, see how things go. If he looks dominant, maybe you can take him a little farther. But your goal would be to get Mikolas then through Harper and Schwarber without much damage at least once while pitching through the rest of the cycle. So Mikolas would get basically 2 times through the order, but maybe only 1 time through Schwarber and Harper. Okay, so maybe that gets you to the 6th inning. That might be pushing it. But 6th inning, and then whenever you come back around to Harper and Schwarber again, that's where Thompson would come in. I probably wouldn't use Cabrera if they're going to carry him unless the game was out of hand one way or the other. But then you've got the right-handed relievers to finish it out. Okay, so that's game one. Game two, I would use Quintana. Now, that one doesn't matter so much because you've got that matchup against Schwarber and Harper that you want. Quintana would be a normal game. Let him go as far as he can. I'd have a fairly quick hook on him just because of the rest of the righties in that lineup, but they don't scare me nearly as much as Harper and Schwarber do. Game three, then, what I think I'd do, and this is where it gets a little nutty, is that I'd start with Matz. Same thing with game one. I'd go Matz, and then this is where I get a little hazy, but I think I'd go Matz Flaherty. And Flaherty because of the ability to generate whiffs and Ks if he happens to be on. But at this point in a game three situation, everyone has a short leash. So Matz gets through the first, Flaherty maybe gets 1 or 2. I wouldn't be shy at all about going to Wainwright if you needed a ground ball or needed something like that. Hicks, whatever you have to do. I would just use the entire roster at that point to get through that game. But it would be basically a Matz, Flaherty, Thompson game, hoping to get to Gio and Helsley for as much as 3 to 4 innings apiece from those guys. So if you got 4 or 5 innings out of Matz, Flaherty, and another righty, or Thompson, and then 3 innings out of the closing at the end, I think that would be your best chance of winning that one in a game that I feel like is very winnable against a left-handed starter.
It's an interesting idea, but I was just curious on why you wanted to give Quintana like the longer rope, but only use Montgomery for like an inning or two. Like, what was your reasoning with the difference between getting Montgomery out of there quicker?
Not really anything other than I would like to, I don't want to steal too much from Mikolas, like because Mikolas could go 7 strong, if that makes sense. And so I don't necessarily want to burn. I have a lot more confidence right now coming out of the bullpen in Thompson or Matz. And so getting Montgomery out of the way as a opener in game 1, you might still be able to use him in game 3 for a longer outing, possibly. That might be stretching it, but mostly it's because of my respect for Mikolas that I went that route. But if Montgomery happened to look good and was on and looked like he might be able to get some righties, you could stretch him to 2 or 3 and then go to Mikolas if you wanted to. The point is you want to give your best innings to your best guys, right?
Right.
That's
right.
Mikolas for 9, I'd be happy, Yeah.
I was gonna say, I think where I disagree with you is I think Montgomery is one of our best guys.
Right.
Yeah.
I wouldn't necessarily only give him the first inning, maybe another inning in game 3. I am a fan of your plan if you use one of the bullpen guys in the first inning. That makes more sense to me than using Montgomery.
So you like, and this might be because I'll admit I've thought this through yet until now. Basically, what you guys are saying is that you like Montgomery more than Matz. Is that what you guys are saying?
Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
For me,
All right.
yeah.
Fair enough. Let's flip them then. Let's use Matz as the opener.
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, that and Matt's can if he's. I mean, I'm wondering if like the first time through the order you stick with somebody like Matt's or whoever, maybe Thompson. Even though the matchup isn't necessarily great, there's a newness that even righties will fit, like because they have experience starting. So maybe, especially Matt's, maybe they'll be able to. I don't know. You would probably want to for Matt's or Thompson who aren't stretched out right now. You probably would only want to keep them for 4, 5, 6 batters.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. I got in my head and I'm realizing you guys are kind of catching me on this, and I think you guys are right. I got in my head Matt's as reliever, Montgomery as starter. So I thought Montgomery first inning, Matt's later in the innings. But now that I think about it, I think you guys are right. There's no reason that Montgomery couldn't either go longer in game 1 or pitch multiple innings in the middle as needed. It'd be odd to throw him out of the bullpen, but honestly, those middle innings and those late innings are just as valuable as innings 1, 2, and 3. I don't care so much about who gets the start anymore. I just want the best guys out there, and Montgomery is definitely one of them. And you definitely want one of those guys, one of those dominant lefties, in to face Schwarber and Harper almost every time you can. I really don't want to see Schwarber and Harper facing a righty that's not very good. I just really don't want to see it. There's no reason for it.
Yeah, I agree with you there.
Yeah.
And can I share another stat? I was curious because Schwarber's so reliant on the homer. So I looked at StatCast. How many home runs would he hit at Busch Stadium? And he would hit 41 homers. I believe his total is 46. So 5 less. It's still a lot of homers, but that's kind of a lot over one season to not hit at it. And with the Phillies, he obviously at Citizens Bank, I think unless again its name changed, he did 46. So
yeah,
it is a different park for him for sure, and hopefully we'll only see long flyouts or just a ton of strikeouts. So take either one of those.
Any other thoughts on the rotation?
I would say just in general, I feel a lot better about this series that it's at home versus if it was on the road. I think Michaelis's stats, his home road splits are pretty trying to think of a good adjective that would describe it, but very noteworthy. I'm pretty sure his ERA on the road is more like 4.5, and at home I think it's sub 3. So if this was a road series, I definitely would be very concerned, but there's just something about playing at home that those starters have much, much better numbers. So I feel like it's slightly better than a coin flip, I would say. That's how I feel right now.
Okay, I got a question for you guys. We all, being the heartless baseball analysts that we all are riding Wainwright out of this series. Will Arlie Marmol, the not so heartless manager that he is, but also very analytically oriented, is Ollie going to not give Wainwright the ball in this series in an important part of the game? including a start?
He won't give him a start.
You don't think he will? I think there's a chance he will.
I mean, there's always a chance, but if I like gun to my head, I have to decide what he's going to do. He's not going to give him a start. I don't know, honestly, if because people are going to say, "Oh, I'm just a cold person. I don't have any feelings. I don't care." But I understand it. I understand it's harsh, but I think I go back and forth on it, right? So I don't know if I would put Wainwright on the roster in this particular series. I wouldn't start him, and if I'm not going to start him, then I would limit. It would be one of those situations where he would be like an emergency. Like if somebody like either Wainwright, or somebody either Montgomery or Michaelis just got destroyed right out of the like 4 innings, 4 runs in the first inning, then in this kind of a series, you have to get him out of there. You can afford to do that. But I don't know if I would want him as just if we're doing all right, I wouldn't put him in a high leverage situation for like a 1 inning appearance. Because if he makes a mistake, it's just there's just too much that can go wrong. I think he will put him on the roster, but I think he won't give him the ball unless it's like one of those dire type emergencies, like I said, where a starter is getting knocked out. And I even think he may not go to him the first time that happens. So it's like, let's say that we've had to pull this. Let's say we get to a game 3 and we've had to pull the starter a little bit early in games 1 and 2, and we survived to game 3 and something else happens. Then you may see Wainwright.
I feel like if that's the plan, then don't put Wainwright on the roster. I feel like he might have I don't know about easier, but might be he could sell it to Wainwright. I mean, Wainwright admitted he doesn't know if he's going to be on the roster, so he knows he's on the hot seat, so to speak. So I wonder if he could have Marmol, if he would plan for him to be starting instead of Flaherty after these 3. He could tell him basically, "I'm going to leave you off the roster because you're probably going to start in the next series, and your stuff just doesn't play up in the bullpen at all." And that's a big problem, is that I don't see any benefit from him going to the bullpen. He's not going to start throwing 95.
No,
his curve's not going to curve more or whatever. He's just not going to see any benefit from being in the bullpen. And if he's not starting, I just don't see how you roster him personally, because like, I'm not like the biggest Jake Woodford fan, but like he's been doing this role the entire season, where if the starter or somebody, if we need innings and it's not as high leverage, he could throw 2 to 3 innings, and he's kind of already got that role figured out. It's kind of a weird thing for Wainwright to have to like do all of a sudden. So yeah, I think I would leave him off the roster, but basically if he intends to start him as the 4th starter instead of Flaherty, tell him you're going to start in the NLCS, but we can't have you on the roster this time. Might be an easier sell that way.
Well, I guess there's Flaherty as another option too. Sorry, Connor. I'm going to circle right back around to you, but I'd have to look at the schedule. But it seems like either he or Flaherty are going to have to start early in what would be the divisional round, because this is the wild card round. And so it does kind of make sense. You could sort of say, hey, we're not starting you this series. We know that. So we're not going to roster you, but you're getting ready for game 1 of the divisional round. And that really wouldn't be an insult to his pride. Not that Wainwright really has that much, he's a team player. But that would be, I think fans would accept that. Connor, what were you going to say?
I would be surprised if he's off the roster. Not that there's much use for him in this series if he's not starting, but just because of who he is and the whole legacy thing and all the keywords that you can use about him that don't line up with numbers. He's a gamer. He's the guy that wants the ball, this and that. I mean, I think he'll be on the roster, but you can't start him. And then to the point of you could leave him off to start him in game 1. You could also start potentially Miles Michaelis or whoever you use in game 1 of the wild card series on like 3 days rest in game 1 of the division series to give yourself a better chance. So I don't know if that's the best argument either, when you could throw somebody who's throwing harder than 88 miles an hour in game 1 of the DS as well.
I would not use Michaelis on 3 days rest. I just want to put that out there. But I
Yeah.
will say the reason why I like Flaherty more in the bullpen because I think his stuff would play up in the bullpen.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
He could be a genuinely elite reliever in the bullpen in a way that Wainwright, I just don't think he would. I think he'd pitch about the same in the rotation for the bullpen.
The only advantage that I can think about to Wainwright in the bullpen, and I'm just stretching here, is that sometimes you need someone that you, especially with this bullpen, and Payante kind of counts, but you might need someone who is not going to walk anybody. And Wainwright can do that, but I mean, you're definitely going to get a ball in play. So if you're in a situation where you can't walk anyone, that means you got runners on base, which means balls in play are bad. So, I mean, you're really stretching to say that you might need someone who can't give up a walk in a certain situation. So, yeah, I'm with you guys on that. Let's talk about roster configuration. Now, one thing that I learned today, and Blake and Gabe and I were chatting about this afternoon, and thanks to Derek Gould and Jeff Jones for kind of clarifying some stuff for us. I'm sure you guys are listening. You're not busy doing other things today. But in the regular season, and Mike, you can talk about this too. I don't mean to steal any of your roster orientating thunder. But in the regular season, you're tied to an even number of pitchers and hitters, 13 and 13. In the postseason, you are 26-man roster, but those restrictions are removed. And so you could have an unbalanced number of pitchers and hitters is the way that Derek explained it to me. So what's your roster, guys? Like some of them are obviously sureties. Like I don't think any of us are going to argue that we're going to leave Nolan Arenado off the roster or Paul Goldschmidt. Talk about the edges for me. Who's your outfield? Who's your 25th and 26th man? Do you take an extra pitcher? Do you take an extra hitter? What are you guys going? Where are you going? Where are you going? Well, Mike, let's start with you.
So let's first talk about real quick. So who we know is not on it because of the roster move that was made, the roster moves that were made today.
Right.
So we had in September, you have 14 pitchers and 14 position players. So before the last game of the series today, they optioned Dakota Hudson and JoJo Romero, and they activated Jordan Hicks from the 15-day injured list. And they recalled Matthew Liberatore. Now, Liberatore, so basically what that means is they've either got to drop two pitchers. I mean, I shouldn't say they have to, but what I predict they'll do, I think 13 pitchers is way overkill for a 3-game series. 12 pitchers is arguably, too much, but I understand that the way things are going now, the starters don't go as deep. They're more inclined to pull somebody. So just assuming for the sake of this conversation that they go with 12 pitchers, they're either going to have to drop two from the allotment they've currently got. One of those is going to be Liberatore. Liberatore is not going to be on it. He was just up to start this game, and that's it. So they're either going to have to drop one more, which is either going to be Wainwright or Woodford. Ali Marmol has confirmed that Zach Thompson will be on the roster.
Okay.
So now the other interesting, so the JoJo Romero and Dakota Hudson, the rules are that even if it's, because normally if somebody's optioned, they get recalled to the paperwork transaction, they get recalled to the major leagues as soon as the regular season is over. But with this new set of rules, if you get optioned, in September or October, you have to spend 15 days away from the club.
That still applies for the playoffs?
It does. So,
yeah.
The earliest Dakota Hudson or Romero could come back would be on October 20th. But at that point, you're in the middle of the NLCS, and you can't make moves like that unless there's an injury. So Hudson and Romero are out until a possible World Series.
Which means they're probably just out.
Which means that they're out.
Yeah.
So the other story circulating around was that John Denton, who's the beat writer for MLB.com for the Cardinals, talked to Genesis Cabrera, who said that he was highly confident he made the roster. He was making the roster. That's, he can think what he wants, right? But it would just seem really odd for somebody to go out and say that. Because, he had some injuries that caused some problems before, but he's now pushing like 98 again. And Ollie had some like kind of competition not too long, like today, or yesterday, between Naughton, Thompson, and Cabrera. So if they do take Cabrera, that means they're going to have to drop somebody else. I actually don't think they're going to take Cabrera. I can see an argument for it because of the lefty situation. But I think what you're going to see is the roster, the roster that was, in play for the Pirates today is going to be the roster you're going to see, except they're going to drop Woodford and they're going to drop Liberator. I even though I would not roster Wainwright, I think you will roster Wainwright.
Well, if Cabrera makes it, there's no
There'd
way
have to be three.
If Wainwright, there's no way Wainwright makes the roster if Cabrera makes it, right?
Right.
You can't
they couldn't be, especially now that he said. I would have said that maybe Thompson doesn't make it, but he's already said that Thompson is on it. So, yeah, if Cabrera makes it, that means Wainwright's out too.
One thing I'll say about Cabrera, and I was looking at his stats when I did my minor league update. He made like 13 appearances. He was good in like 10 of them, and the other 3 he allowed 11 earned runs. Like he was either getting blown up or having basically a clean inning. So I don't know what to think about that in the playoffs. He won't be allowed to give up 11 earned runs in 3 appearances in the playoffs. He'd be taken out way sooner than that.
Yeah.
I just found that interesting that he might have, I don't know if a ton, but some upside in the sense that like when he's, clicking, they might not score.
Yeah.
I would do it.
Just to give a little non-stats update on that, because I saw your stats and I've been kind of thinking that same thing and some of what he said, that he might be back. But just to throw this in there, Kyle Reese, friend of the pod here, Kyle Reese, obviously follows and watches minor leagues every day, and he's been pretty definitive that Cabrera's looked terrible. So even with the velocity being there, the performance in Kyle's mind hasn't been there. So check with Kyle on that one. But with those stats plus that report, I think it's a sketchy ad. And while if he's on, he can be good. He hasn't been on most of the season, and this AAA performance doesn't really change that for me. And so if he's on and there for a while, the idea that he was going to be on and Zach Thompson was going to be off seemed like just ludicrous Mike Matheny stuff. And not something that either Mo or Schilt would, not Schilt, sorry, Mo or Marmol, even Schilt wouldn't want it. Mo or Marmol would do. I will say, though, that looking at Jeff Jones's roster that he posted at the Belleville News Democrat, he has the Cardinals taking 12 pitchers. Cabrera's not one of them. Now, this would have posted before Ditton's report. Cabrera's not on there. Wainwright is. No Woodford there. Chris Stratton's on there. Jordan Montgomery, Palante, Quintana, the guys you'd expect. So if Cabrera's going to make it, according to Jeff Jones's predicted roster, Wainwright would probably have to come out and Cabrera would have to go in. Otherwise, you have to cut someone like Stratton or Piante or Hicks. But we know Hicks is going to be on. So yeah. So that's kind of where Jeff stands, and that's kind of where I stand too. Any of you guys have any other thoughts on a 12? I mean, I think we're all in agreement. 12-man pitching staff is the only thing that makes any sense at all, right?
I'm interested in how many lefties they end up stacking up in there. Do they possibly leave Stratton off? I don't like Stratton. I don't think he's very good. I think I would rather throw a lefty on there just to neutralize those two. And I'm wondering if Ollie's, because Matz is going to be there, Thompson's going to be there. And then you have potentially Packy or Genesis Cabrera. I'm very curious how many lefties they try to stack in that bullpen for the sole purpose of just neutralizing those two guys late in games.
That's a lot of lefties for a team that is primarily, besides those two, is primarily a right-handed heavy lineup. I guess it depends on who they play, but yeah, there's been a lot of discussion about that, and that does seems like they're worrying an awful lot about two very good hitters But if we ended up with Thompson, Cabrera, Matz, we're not sure about Montgomery. That's four. Four, and then if Paquinot or something, that's a lot of lefties.
I will say,
Yeah.
if it's between Cabrera and Packy, it's going to be Cabrera. Packy
Yeah,
hadn't pitched since the 21st,
right.
which was in the major leagues. He got sent down. He didn't pitch for a week. I was kind of confused by that. Why he
Yeah.
didn't pitch in Memphis. I don't know if there's anything to read into that, but I mean, I think there's a little bit to be read into that. But
Well, I think too the fact that they cut, that Romero's not an option too. They were talking about Packy for a while. They're talking about Romero for a while. The fact that Romero's not an option eliminates Romero and Packy, because Romero would be ahead of Packy, I would think. So then it just comes down probably to Cabrera or Wainwright for that 12th spot, unless we're missing someone, or Stratton. And I could see them leaving Stratton off, but Stratton's pretty useful. And if you don't have him, it's putting a lot of weight on Gallegos, Helsley, and Payante. Well, Hicks too. Boy, would I take Stratton over Hicks or Hicks over Stratton? I have to think about that.
How did Hicks look today?
I don't really want to take either. I don't really want to take either of them.
How did Hicks look today? I didn't see the game.
I missed that part of I missed his inning, unfortunately. So
did anybody see Hicks pitch today?
Yeah, I saw him pitch. He got through it fine.
Okay. He's got some. I think he's got more upside than Stratton for sure.
Oh, definitely more upside, but also more volatility.
Yeah, although Stratton has his control problems at times too.
What did he get today? An inning, 2 hits, no strikeouts, no walks.
15 pitches, 10 strikes.
So I mean, 2 hits.
You just never know. I do like the idea, kind of like Cody Whitley last year. I kind of like the idea of having someone. I don't know that Stratton qualifies, so that's a good point there. And maybe Payante is that guy. It's someone that can come in there, and they might not have overwhelming stuff, but they're not going to put more runners on the base through free passes. And the Cardinals don't have a whole lot of that in the middle of their bullpen, unless you're talking about some of the lefties, like Thompson would be that guy. Matz probably shouldn't walk very many people. We haven't seen him a lot out of the bullpen, but I don't know. I wish they just had one more righty that I knew we could rely upon, but they just don't. All right, so pitching staff is what it is and a confusing mess. What about the offensive side? I think if we're all talking 12 pitchers, we're talking 14 hitters. I'm assuming that means 2 catchers. No one wants to take a third catcher, right? This isn't Mike Matheny era. Who's on the fringes of your offensive roster?
First, we should go through the guys who are definitely on, right?
Yeah. So Jeff Jones has 6 infielders. Arenado, I'll save this one. Donovan, Edman, Goldschmidt, Pujols. He has DeYoung. We can talk about DeYoung. I think that's a major point of conversation. And then outfielders, he's got 6. Burleson, Carlson, Dickerson, Nootbaar, Yepez, and DeLuzio.
Okay.
I mean, the thing about this is there isn't really much of a choice. Because everybody's here that's here. I mean, the only other options of people who are not here already are Ivan Herrera, Nolan Gorman, and Kramer Robertson. So who do you want to cut to add one of those guys?
Yeah, well, I mean, we can eliminate immediately Robertson and Herrera because you don't need a third catcher, and Robertson doesn't serve any purpose. So it would be Gorman versus probably Burleson or DeYoung.
Well, I think the main question is, do we need DeYoung to be a defensive replacement? Because I feel like, I mean, it's nice to have a second shortstop, but if Edman got hurt or something, like you could just bring him back. And I just don't know that he has a whole lot of advantage. And because it's not like Edman's probably a better fielder at shortstop than him. And the numbers definitely say that.
Yeah, definitely.
Donovan, I think second base is his best position. I don't know if that's correct. So I don't really know that you're getting a huge advantage with him from defense. It's not like we got a butcher in the middle infield that he's replacing. It's not like Yepez is playing in the middle infield that we need DeYoung to defensive replace for late in the game. Now Gorman has been terrible in AAA, But I feel like there might be a little bit more use that he can run into a homer as a pinch hitter or something than just playing in the eighth or ninth innings, and you're trying to avoid using his bat whenever possible.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, right? So, like, who would be your first left-handed pinch hitter off the bench right now? Right? I mean, like, would it be if you did bring him up here? Would it be him? Would it be Burleson, Dickerson? If he's not starting, I don't know. I don't know what they're gonna. I mean, the outfield is just so over the board, like all over the board. I don't know what they're gonna do there for starters. If
So
it were
okay,
me,
so let's start with that. Let's work with process of elimination. Who are your guys' outfield starters for this series, or is it going to vary?
Probably Yepez, Carlson, Nootbaar, right? I hate Yepez in the outfield, but I do not think that he's worse than Dickerson. Dickerson's had some tough looks in the outfield. And I mean, I wouldn't be outraged if Dickerson was, I don't know if this is crazy, if he's just off the roster. Like, I've seen absolutely nothing from Corey Dickerson for about a month now. And I would rather risk Yepez in the outfield than Dickerson at this point. I don't know if I'm in an island on that, though.
It can't be better. It can't be worse than Castellanos. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't really like Dickerson either, so I'm definitely sort of with you on that. I just don't know who you would replace him with is the only issue. If you're carrying 14 hitters at least, and I guess you could take him off for Gorman, but I don't know. It's kind of a tough situation with Yepez. You definitely Deluzio, I guess, would be the defensive replacement there, wouldn't he? So
probably, or even for Carlson and center, I wouldn't mind that. You'd lose a little bit of offense. You gain a little bit of defense. It's not really much of an advantage.
No,
so
I mean, like when you take out Yepez late in games, which I think you would have to do if you're leading, then you put Deluzio in place of him at either at center or left, right?
Yeah, you could do that, right?
Yeah. So you're definitely not putting Dickerson as a defensive replacement, and I really wouldn't. I don't really want to see him. I'd still get annoyed when he pinch hit for Tyler O'Neill that one game because I know whatever, but like I don't know. Tyler O'Neill's a better hitter, and I just don't want to enter that situation where he'll pinch it with Corey Dickerson because he's facing a right-handed pitcher. Because I feel like he's a below-average hitter at this point in his career, and there's a huge pinch hitting penalty in general.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm not a Dickerson fan either, so I definitely would love for him not to be on the roster. I just don't see how.
I kind of feel like, and just from what we've seen out of Marmol lately, although he's been a little flexible, I almost fully expect Dickerson to start every game except that third one. And I think that he will come around and he'll put Carlson as the center fielder. I think he'll have to. But there's a long time there where he wouldn't play Carlson in center, and he was playing Dickerson, he was playing Nootbaar, and then Burleson and or whoever else in that final spot. And I think Dickerson's your left field starter. I'm just gonna kind of go ahead and say that, which means that Yepez would be available, as a right-handed pitch hitter as needed. But
I don't disagree. I see the logic because he doesn't strike out, and we're facing strikeout pitchers.
I'm not trying to defend it. I'm just saying I think that's what Marmol is going to do.
No. I agree. Yeah. I'm saying I can see the logic he's probably working with, which is that Wheeler and Nola both are huge strikeout guys, and he puts the ball in play.
Yeah.
Although I do feel like sometimes he's overwhelmed by fastballs.
He puts the ball in play on the ground to second base is what he does.
Right.
Absolutely.
I would still take, considering his history and his splits and the way that he bats, I would still take Yepez in that situation. Yepez is not some, home run or nothing type of hitter. He can push the ball to all fields. He's a good hitter. He hasn't shown it that much. And he can handle some harder fastballs, which he'll see. Which I don't know that Dickerson still can. He had a little stretch there where he did, but hard fastballs was not his thing early in the season. Also, by the way, hard fastballs is not Albert Pujols' thing, but we're living with that. I think right now Pujols is one of the hottest hitters we've got, and he's gonna play every day. So
It's funny how that ended up, didn't it? When
Oh,
at the beginning of the season, we were all concerned about Pujols returning pitchers. Then all of a sudden, we're like, yeah, he should definitely start at DH every
play
game.
every day, even against righties. Yeah,
Completely
unbelievable. I thought I will acknowledge I will fall on my sword here. I thought that was going to be a disaster. I thought it was going to be a legacy hire that they were just going to throw out there and until it just couldn't happen anymore. I did not, my wildest dreams, I did not expect anything like what happened. So I'll be the first to say I was wrong because
I was just really afraid that it was just gonna be depressing to watch him.
Yeah.
Quite frankly, that was my main concern.
Yeah, me
Because
too.
I think everybody who wanted it did not realize how bad he was with the Angels the last few years. And
Right.
if he was
I
as
mean,
bad as he was with the Angels, this would not be fun.
right.
No doubt about it. But
Yeah.
somehow late career resurgence, which is
Right.
great.
People have given me a lot of heat for being against it and talking about it, but I mean, I'll stand by the analysis that I did. It wasn't even that hard. I mean, very clear, history and stats that showed exactly what Pujols was. But this year he wasn't. And I'm going to give Marmol a ton of credit. I did not think that Marmol would be able to stand up to Molina and Pujols and put those guys into the right situations, but he did. I mean, it happened. And
Pujols
yeah,
didn't play for a long. Yeah, Pujols didn't play for a long time. He was out. He was on the bench for several games in a row, and he would only play against lefties. And it wasn't really until that, the home run chase heated up that he started to heat up even more. So I give Oli Marmol a lot of credit. I didn't think he had it in him.
Yeah,
I was wrong about that too.
I was wrong about that. Yeah, I hope, but how would you expect that out of the youngest manager in the league in his first year? I mean, to have that kind of ability to stand up to one of the best hitters in the game and surefire Hall of Famers and say, this is what you're going to do. But they did. So yeah, I mean, I'll eat all the crow. You can feed me all day long because I was wrong and it worked out and I'm happy. So, I'll take it. Okay, so it sounds like we're pretty much in agreement. I don't really see a place for Gorman. I'd like to have that home run ability off the bench. Also, all you have to do is throw Nolan Gorman a high, hard fastball right now, and he's going to strike out. So, the odds of you seeing that home run are pretty low. And I don't see a manager going into a playoff series without a backup shortstop. That's just not what managers do. So Paul DeJong is on the roster and Gorman's not. And it's just kind of that simple. And then Ben DeLuzio too is basically worthless, but he does have a glove. So that's two spots that you're kind of hoping don't see the field at all. But when you've got 14, position players over 3 games, you really don't want to see all of them anyway.
Could Brendan Donovan be that backup shortstop hypothetically? I mean, he's played some innings there.
But like I said, I mean, what manager's not going to – Donovan can play there, but he's not good at all,
Well, he could play if Edman had to be taken out of a game for the last few innings, which is really what you're talking about. Because Edman's not going to ever not be in the field as long as
But then who's going to play second? I guess Gorman would be on the roster. Right. Gorman would play second at that point. So, yeah. Yeah, I mean, you could make a good argument. I just don't see a manager not taking their backup shortstop. So
I agree with that. He's definitely making the roster. I don't necessarily think he needs to.
Yeah. All right. Any other roster mechanics? It sounds like we got it all figured out. And
many people predicted that Ben DeLuzio, Burleson, and Yepez would be on the roster at the end of the year. I never would have. I mean, I didn't even really know who Ben DeLuzio was, other than that we took him in the minor league phase of the Rule 5 draft. But I'm just stunned that we saw both DeLuzio and Burleson up here at all this year, much less on the playoff roster.
Yeah. For very different reasons.
Yeah,
right.
Burleson, it looked like they were going to 40-man. Like, let's not have to use him in the 40-man. And DeLuzio was more like, who is Ben DeLuzio?
Right.
So,
actually, Gabe, I got to give you a little credit because I'm pretty sure you mentioned Ben DeLuzio in a couple podcasts ago, and I was like, oh yeah, Yeah, Ben DeLuzio, right. This is before he was called up. Definitely an option. Never heard of him before. So
I don't even remember doing that. So thank you for.
well, it might not have been you, but I'm going to give you the credit. So I think at that point we were talking about whether Burleson should be up or not, and I think you mentioned in passing as another guy that could end up coming up. But that's from you keeping track of the AAA team. So, all right. Any other roster things? Any other matchups you guys are concerned about? I think we've kind of talked through those. I mean, we are worried about the lefties. We're worried about their starters. We're worried about our offense, but we do have 2 MVP candidates, and let's hope that they hit. Right? That's what we're kind of hoping for. The other thing I'd say too is with their defense out there, I think that could be an important series for guys like Edman and Donovan and Carlson, Newbar to some extent, Yepez to some extent, who can spray the ball. Well, besides Goldie too, who can kind of spray the ball all around the field, force their defense to make plays, and could get some extra base runners through them kicking the ball around a little bit. But that might be stretching things a little bit. But there is a spot for some of our weaker hitters since their defense is not so spectacular. All right, predictions. Let's end with this. A good hour on this matchup in this series. Let's hear it. Final words. Who's winning? How's this going to go? Are the Cardinals moving on, or are we talking postseason next week? Or off season next week, I should say.
I'll predict I'll predict the Cardinals. I can't. They're the better team. It's just a matter of. I don't know if they're a better team if Nola and Wheeler are allowed to pitch 2/3 of every game in 162 games. But they figure out how to win one of the first 2 games, just any way you can. And I really like our chances in game 3. So it's not a bad position to be in at all, as opposed to the Brewers, where you'd be facing, although the Brewers' offense is significantly worse, you'd be facing Woodruff, Peralta, and Burns, which is, on the whole, a scarier threesome to face than have to face Suarez. So I really like our chances if we could figure out to win one of the first 2 games. We could win the first 2 games and make it really easy, though. But yeah, I'll pick the Cardinals because they're the better team, even though the matchup's not great.
Connor.
Yeah, Cardinals in 3. I think they lose the first one with Wheeler. I think they win 2. And then I think once they get to 3, I think it's done. So I think they'll put a little stress on us and put them down in a 1-game hole early, but I think they'll get through it.
I mean, I'll go Cardinals in 3, but I'm honestly not very confident about that prediction. I could just as easily seeing us losing in 2 and getting skunked.
Well, I can't be the oddball here. I'd like to just play devil's advocate, but sometimes you just got to be, honest. And I'm going to go Cardinals in 3 as well. I'm also pretty sketchy about this, but I'm not sketchy enough to think that the Cardinals are going to lose. I think that the Phillies, I think we're giving them a lot of credit here, which is good, and a lot of respect for their pitching. But there's a reason that they haven't won very many games. They've won a lot of games, but not nearly as many as the Cardinals. And the Cardinals are stable enough, veteran-y enough, and I would like to say more creative, although that might not be true. But I think that Ollie's going to pull out all the stops that he needs to do to make sure that they don't lose this series. I think he's going to try to do everything. So I like that being the case. I like Arenado. I like Goldschmidt. I like the deep lineup. I like Pujols. I like Yepez. I don't mind the pitching staff, and I like the back end of the bullpen. This is a team that should win a series. We can talk about the Braves if we get that far, but they should win this series. And I think, like you guys, it's going to be tense, but it's going to be the Cardinals in the end that move on. So, final thoughts from you guys?
Would you guys agree? Okay, sorry. I was gonna say, would you guys agree that it's either going to be 2-0 Phillies or 2-1 Cardinals? Do you see a scenario where it's 2-1 Phillies? I mean, obviously there's a scenario, but like,
yeah, no, I don't. I wouldn't.
Those are the 2 likely outcomes, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'd be surprised. I think that game 3 favors the Cardinals so much that it's hard to predict that, but baseball happens. So, yeah. All right. Well, hey, Viva Alberto's big playoff series. We'll be watching. We'll be talking. We will have all the commentary, all the comments that you need, open threads, game recaps, articles as we go along. But we'll be right there with you. And happy playoffs, Viva Alberto's. And we'll see you on Friday at 1 o'clock for the Wild Card Series. Have a wonderful day.